Welcome to another episode of Vital Doc Talk. And on today's episode, we interview Ari. Ari has done physical therapy for quite a while, but let's let him introduce himself on the show and start talking about his background. Welcome to the show, Ari.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and Ari, I think when we spoke last time, you said it was been over 20 years. Like you spent a lot of time in the industry. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been a sports and injury rehab therapist for 26 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've incorporated things that are traditional and non-traditional. So I've trained in everything from temple lomi lomi, myofascial release, aromatherapy, clinical hypnotherapy, and then I've done specialists in like sports hypnotherapy and corrective exercise, performance enhancement, herbology, nutrition, etc. I've done a lot of training.
Yeah, 26 years, guys. So he has a lot of knowledge here. And tell us about what led you down this journey today, to where you are, and then what's your outlook for the future?
Yeah, so it's funny, I have this story. I've been sick most of my life and had a brain tumor. People didn't know I had the brain tumor. Went to a naturopath when I was 17 and a half, 18. And the naturopath gave me snake venom as a homeopathic remedy. And one day was a lot of allergies. I took a lot of the snake venom. I was whitewater rafting, actually, as you and I were talking about, and got a little heat stroke, sunstroke, and basically went in anaphylactic shock and
Wow.
was dead for 20 something minutes, about 26, 28 minutes before they brought me back. And I woke up in the hospital a few days later and I sat up and I said, I think I need to be a healer. And that's really how I got started.
Wow, that's almost a movie-like right there.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting way to get started, but I was very lucky in how I got to that position, what I was able to do from the school that I went to, as far as interning with some pro sports teams, working with some of the best in the industry from the last 40 years before me. And luckily, the owner of that school knew everybody. So in that first year, I started 3 of the first corporate wellness companies in the country with Intel, Nike, and Tektronix, because my school backed up into the campuses of those campuses. And so I just said, well, we need to get our clinic, have more clients. Let's go do that. And then I got to work on Richard Simmons and a few pro sports players. The sports players ended up saying, "You're really good. You need to come work with us." And for a year, I got to intern with them. So it was kind of kismet. It was just, everything happened very much by destiny rather than me putting it out there. But I was very lucky in my ability to learn. And so that's kind of how I got started. That's how I became the performance therapist and was able to make as much of the impact as I've been able to make so far.
I love that. And for the future, what's your outlook there? I know you're starting a podcast, right?
Yeah, I'm starting a podcast that is meant to basically challenge everybody and everything. So the status quo, the systems that are the way they are all suboptimal. Even if they're a decent system, it's a suboptimal system. And I'm known as the performance therapist because results are a must. You have to get results when you're working with Olympic athletes. You have to get results when you're working with, high level actors, actresses, people like that. And so if you don't have a job, really. But our systems are designed more for procedures versus results. And so this podcast is called Create a New Tomorrow. And really it's about how do we stand up against the systems and create the world that we want based on optimal results. How do we get those results? How do we get louder? I always say that silence is a bully's best friend. And that's because if you're quiet, the bully gets away with everything. But if you start getting loud, if you start taking those passions that you have and creating a movement, now we can do something substantial and long lasting.
I like that because, personally, that resonates with me personally because whenever I have a challenge or an issue, right, we have a team of 12 and I'm like the whiner in the company and I'll complain. I'm the first to point at it, or if I didn't do something, I'll be like, oh, I didn't do this. I didn't do that today. And everybody will know. And then it kind of holds me accountable to it. And once you, I think, identify the problem, the first step, right, to solving the problem is identifying it and analyzing it. And then you can go ahead and bring the cure. So I really like that. And also, by the way, we glossed over this. You also worked with some big companies, right?
Yeah.
Tektronix, I think, was one of them. And then what other companies? I think Nike, did you say? Or
Intel, Tektronix, Bank of America's fraud department, Boeing at one point, Sun Microsystems, West Marine. I've worked with a lot of pretty major corporations.
yeah, and that's huge, guys. I mean, I'm sure all of our, all the listeners, they would love to have, be the main doctor or healer for Nike, et cetera. So I wanted to definitely talk about that, maybe a little bit later in the interview, but I know, I have to respect the format of the show and I have to ask the guests always, what's your favorite marketing method that you've used to grow? Has it been word of mouth? Has it been, just really focused on your results in practice? What would you say?
Right. Word of mouth is obviously my favorite because it means two things. One, that I've provided the results that the person paid me for. And two, it means that they liked the results so much, they were willing to share that with, with a friend. So that's really my favorite way of doing marketing. And I'm starting this podcast actually as, a way to get my voice out, to get, to get louder. I've been speaking internationally live events, but live events are no longer. So it's time to make that impact larger, bigger, louder. And so I'm looking forward to that being a vehicle for getting people to know me better.
And yeah, especially nowadays, right, with coronavirus, live events are a lot harder to do. And also I like what you pointed about actually word of mouth, because I think if you grow through word of mouth and you focus on just being an amazing service, not that it's easy, it's probably something fairly hard, depends on the service or what you provide, then you really know that you've got something unique. The difficulty is, though, I think, finding the initial potential clients, and there's kind of two, from at least from my outside perspective, right? Because the first mindset is, okay, I do it for free, but if you do it for free, most of the time you're undervalued, right? What would be your tips for doctors out there to get their initial first or second clients? Is it through your network? Is it meetups?
Yeah, the first thing that you want to do is go to the people you know. This goes against all ethics laws, by the way, is you're not supposed to work, if you're a doctor, you're not supposed to work on your family or friends because of conflict of interest. Well, I say if you're the best at what you do, then you should be the one doing the work, right? You shouldn't be referring out to somebody who is less than what you are.
That's actually a pretty shady area. And let's, because I have a friend who's a dentist and he's worked on his family members and whatnot. And, because they believe in him and vice versa. And that's really an interesting part of the law, right? Like you can't work on your family, which is pretty weird. For every other profession, right, you'd be happy to work with your family versus that's interesting. But keep going. We're listening.
Yeah.
Okay. So first you go to family and friends.
So family, friends, and then get testimonials from them, but get them based on results. I always like to say, do the clinicals, but track results so that if no matter what you're doing, you can say, we went from here and we got here. Here was the goal. This is where we got to, right? That way, all results are measurable, which means that they can be proven, and it's not just somebody who's saying, yay, he's good, even though nothing happened for them. So get authentic testimonials because you actually do the work and are good at it, and then have them become part of your referral source. The other way to do that is partnerships and there's power partners versus referral sources. So a power partner is somebody who's going to take your business and say, you know what, you're going to be the person that I'm sending all of my patients to who have this issue, So knowing your colleagues in the field who are maybe in different or adjunctive specialties as you is a really good way of building up your own clientele, especially if you're trying to stay away from the insurance model. Because the insurance model, they'll send you plenty of clients, right? Because they have to, you're in their plan. But when you're not an insurance-based practitioner or doctor, then it makes it more important to have good marketing. And so power partners are people that are in adjunctive fields. So let's say you're a functional medicine doctor and you want to make power partners with personal trainers. You want to make power partners with nutritionists. You want to make power partners with physical therapists, et cetera. Because if you have somebody who comes in to see you as a functional medicine, you're not going to be the only person that can get done all the things that need to be done. So if you're able to send them to those people, guess who they're going to send their clients to you who come into a personal trainer, have diabetes and other chronic illnesses, right? They're going to send them to who? Their power partner, their functional medicine doctor that can promote them, and they can work together. And now you could create programs and design them specifically for clients. This is how in my world, the best way to do that kind of marketing is. Next is obviously, get online and talk about it. But if you're going by an old school, I'm an old school guy. If you're going by old school, methods, power partners are probably the best way to get clients. And you could see that might be over $100,000, $200,000 a year just from one individual power partner.
Wow. I mean, those are great results. And I think, where did you learn that, by the way? I mean, I think Power Partners, it's a phenomenal concept. I always looked at it as, we came up with channel partners from a mentor of mine. And so we have other agencies that specialize in other types of marketing, or other vendors that work with doctors, coaches, et cetera, that we try to work with. What about you though? Who taught you those concepts?
I've been involved in probably every kind of self-development as well as business development seminar process since I was 8. So I went to test when I was 8 years old, LifeSpring, Landmark Forum, Sterling Institute, and then Peak Potentials, EMI. So I've been on stage with Mark Victor Hansen and Robert Allen doing their Enlightened Millionaire workshops, and John Childers. So I've been around, I don't know how many places, but the truth is that CEO Space and Bernie Dorman talking about collaboration versus competition. There is no competition in the world except for what's here. And you should only be competing with yourself to be better every day, not with the people down the street. So there's been several instances that I learned that lesson. Well, I'll tell you one really great one. I was working with this Israeli in Los Angeles who owned a company called Hypergravity. And Hypergravity is one of those platform vibration devices that you use to work out. Mm-hmm. And he had said that he used to own a lighting store. And he opened the lighting store across the street from another lighting store. And had totally different things than that lighting store had. But he put up his displays, and people who were going there ended up coming over to his place. And so what he ended up doing is making a partnership with the lighting store across the street. So they would not have the same merchandise. And if somebody was looking for a more classical look, they would go there. And if somebody was looking for a more modern look, they would go to his. And so just that alone is a lesson that we don't need to win the day all the time. We don't need to put them out of business and crush it and all that stuff. What we need to do is collaborate and say, hey, you're in my neighborhood, I'm in the neighborhood, let's work together. Let's see how we can support each other and help each other.
I really love that mindset. Actually, personally, I really believe in it. My favorite example is Microsoft and, their arch nemesis, Apple. But, a lot of people don't know that Microsoft actually owns more stock in Apple than most Apple executives. And, Apple actually worked with Microsoft to create, I think it was Lisa or, one of the Macs basically, so they've done a bunch of awesome collaboration works. And I think every company is a little bit different. It does kind of get tough, right? Like I do SEO for doctors, but I have spoken to another company like Patient Pop, which is huge in the space. We've had good conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it can get tough, but I think once you build that relationship up, then no one's going to own 100% of the market, or chances are 50% even. And if, I like to think that if Microsoft and Apple can collaborate, then you should be able to with everybody as well. Of course, there's always people that have that other mindset. But so you've been obviously collaborating a lot, and a new doctor or an experienced doctor even comes in, they get these channel partners, etc. How they must be asking, do we get to work with the Nike or the Microsoft or one of these big companies? How do we get there? And what's closing that deal look like?
You got to be lucky enough to have your school back up to their campuses. That, so originally I was called in by a company when I first moved to Los Angeles. I was called in by a company who was doing corporate wellness programs. And that company said, we need a therapist at this location at this time. I booked it. And then they said, we had two of our other therapists back out. So I said, don't worry about it. I'll get them. I'll take care of it. It's done. You won't have to worry. And I provided the other two therapists, and I ended up having their national contract. And so anytime they had any events at any one of these companies, I was the one that they called to fulfill all of the needs of that event. So whether it was smoking cessation or massage or whatever it was, we filled all of their needs. And that was kind of how I got into a lot of them at the very beginning. Going into HR associations and speaking is a really good way. But the thing is, there's a lot of corporate wellness companies, right, that are out there. And if you could go to the corporate wellness company itself, who is already in the big companies, it's a much shorter leap to the corporate wellness company than it is to the major company. And so if you could get in with the corporate wellness companies, then and do some events for them, give some education, free lunch and learns, that kind of thing, all of a sudden you're going to be their go-to person when that company is needing a physician or a chiropractor or a therapist of some sort. And so you kind of weasel your way in, so to speak, through the back door of these major companies. But I'll give you another example. Something people, I like to do pop-ups when I'm speaking. And one of the questions that I had one time was a pop-up about strength and conditioning. So just something that most people don't ever do. They don't ever go to the companies themselves typically and say, hey, I can help you with this, right? But this one a piece of advice I gave somebody who's a strength and conditioning coach. I said, are there any docks or warehouse districts near you? And of course, in most major cities, there are. And so I said, why don't you go down and talk to them about giving you an opportunity to do some strength and conditioning for their employees who are lifting hundreds of pounds every hour over and over and over again, right? They're lifting, they're shoveling, they're moving, they're doing something physical that they need to have OSHA standards and regulations and make sure that they're bending their knees and all these other things. So I said, why don't you go down to the docks? Why don't you see if you could get them to allow you to do it at a lunch break, an hour-long lunch and learn, and teach them some things about strength and conditioning so that they don't get injured. Well, guess what happens when you do that? Cuts their workers' comp. you could actually negotiate with their insurance company to lower the rates for their workers' comp because it's going to lower their workers' comp claims.
Ah,
Employees aren't going to have as many injuries. They're not going to miss as many days. They're going to be more productive because they're using proper body mechanics. And so you pitch them on all of this stuff. Is the company going to let you do an hour long? Yes, of course they're going to let you do for free an hour long lunch and learn. They'll even pay for the lunch most of the time. So now what you do is anybody who's at this, employees that wants to come and get regular care can come and get regular individualized sessions. Or if there's people who want to set up in a group, we could do group sessions. That's 2 products that you get to sell now, right? If the company wants you to have a regular gig there, which they probably will if you can lower their insurance and do all these other things for them, now you have the corporation that pays for, in some cases, half or whole of the cost of you. You're all of a sudden building 3-4 products that you hadn't sold before to a market you haven't even thought of. I mean, that could be extremely lucrative. Get 2 or 3 of those. Boom.
that's awesome. And I know you actually have done that. What are your tips for initially getting in the door? Is it just to go to these companies that already work with the corporations? Is that the best way?
That is probably the best way. Another way to do it is go to the HR boards that are local to your community. So almost all HR companies that have, or cities that have big companies in the city have HR boards that meet. So they have an association. And I would go to the association and, again, lunch and learns, do a little 15-minute spiel on why corporate wellness and why you and what you can do for them. And, always remember that HR is looking at hard costs more than soft costs. So what can you do for them? You can lower their insurance rates. You can increase their productivity. You could, decrease sick days, increase employee loyalty. How much does that cost you? How much? You always ask them all the time, how much does that cost you to have to retrain another employee? How much does it cost you if your average employee works out of an 8-hour day, 3 hours of that are productive? How much would you make more hard costs if you could increase that to 4 or 5 hours a day of productive work versus 3? And so you want to make sure you're talking to them in their language.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure, what about the paperwork with big companies? Do you do that, or that's I'm sure, something that'll pop up as well?
Yeah, so when you're working with some of these corporate wellness programs, they already have built-in softwares and things like that. If you're going to be doing corporate wellness in any way, shape, or form, you need to get software. You need to get tracking software that can set up your system, make sure that what you're doing is trackable and graphable so that you can show HR. So here's where we were, here's where we are now. It may not feel like it's, so here's the problem. HR relies on money, right? They're money and profit based only, not, unfortunately. And so if you can't prove to them that you're getting that their company's getting a financial benefit, they won't be as likely to do it. So the software allows you to show emphatically, here's how many has started on the Walk Fit program. Here's how many are doing it. Here's what they've lost. Here's the numbers. So it's just like marketing, actually. The data tells the story. It's this.
And what kind of software would that be? Can you name any software out there?
All kinds of corporate wellness programs and software out there. I don't have any off the top of my head.
Got it. Just Google it. It'll probably be up there.
Yeah, just corporate wellness. And you can, at the same time, corporate wellness companies.
They have it. Yep.
Especially corporate wellness companies in Michigan, in Detroit, Michigan, corporate wellness companies in Orlando, Florida, in Los Angeles.
Awesome.
So you'll be able to find places, also HR boards. So Google HR association boards, local, city.
I think that's really cool in terms of a new model, because no other doctors actually talked about going the corporate route and working with corporations. And I think that's definitely going to be valuable for our listeners. But out of respect for your time, Ari, if you were talking to a doctor right now, and you've probably seen a lot, for the last 26 plus years, what do you think is kind of a main takeaway you'd like to give our listeners, or what is one vital action step they should take as a result of,
Yeah. So here's the thing. Results are better than procedures.
Mm-hmm.
Get results. The more you get results, the more money you're going to make. The more money you're going to make, the more people are going to talk about you. The more respect in the community you're going to have. The more people are going to talk about you. The more respect you're going to have. It's a cycle. And the more the companies will say, hey, what about that doc? That's the guy we need to do our this. That's the guy we need to do this. So you have to build a reputation around greatness. And that means that you have to learn things that you may not want to learn. If it's not your specialty, you may want to learn some of others' specialties so that you can collaborate and get better results. But that's the thing that I tell everybody is deserve the clients and patients that you have. We all got in this business for a reason, and this is where I kind of pick fights with some people sometimes. But we got in this business to help heal people. And the system at large is failing that objective tremendously, which is evident in every statistic you can imagine, from uprise in diabetes to uprise in autism to uprise in heart disease, etc. We're failing the end goal of the result. So be valuable and different and unique by getting better results than anybody ever gets. Increase your skill set, increase your collaborative efforts so that you can learn how to speak the language of the other professions so that you can communicate properly. Because it's like me speaking Hebrew to somebody who speaks Japanese.
Yeah.
We don't understand each other. The different professions and modalities don't understand each other's language. Doesn't make us bad. It just means we're speaking a different language. So we need to learn at least enough of the other language to know how that person can help us do our job better.
So I like that. So, you talk about how focusing on looking at the picture holistically helps heal or, get results for your patient. And then once you're done, then you can show before and afters. And I think those sell the best than anything else, and, spread word of mouth, et cetera. So definitely a great tip. Ari, why don't you plug it up? You earned it. Tell us, what should we be checking out? Books, movies, TV shows, whatever you want us to look at. Tell us about your website, et cetera.
Yeah. So brokenbrains.com is a great documentary done by Mark Hyman. And I'll plug, I'm about to launch a podcast called Create a New Tomorrow. And all about taking that voice that we have and using it for good. So silencing the bullies, creating activism, using our passions and our promise of what we promise people and saying, we're going to do that and we're going to do it better. So how do we build the movements that change the system? And that's really about creating a new tomorrow, activating your vision for a better world. What is it that we want? And if you'd like to go, let's see, I wasn't planning on advertising myself, but.
No, you should be. I mean, you should be ready to sell every day, and Ari, how do you say the last name? Gronich?
Gronich.
Ari Gronich. I'm sure people can find you on LinkedIn as well, right?
Yeah. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, but you can go to achievehealthusa.com/free checklist, and it'll give you an assessment that you take into a deep dive into your business and your personal life. And it's just my gift for your listeners. It's called achievehealthusa.com/free checklist. And that'll take you to a page. You get a free list of all these questions that ask you deep dive, including your marketing, your websites, your etc., and then go into how do I want to live? What kind of life do I want to lead? How do I want to contribute to the world? So it really takes you deep into an understanding of yourself and why you're doing what you're doing.
I love that. And if a doctor wanted to reach out to you, is there an email address they should type in or a social media channel? What should they do?
Yeah, they can go to info@achievehealthusa.com, or they could find me on LinkedIn and message me. So just let me know that they found me on the Vlad Show.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That was another episode of Vital Doc Talk, and have a great day.